Hi, everyone. My name is Robin DeLucia, and I am a career coach with Empower Coaching. And I want to thank you for joining me this evening. I have put together some very specific tips that I can share with you and that I share with lots of clients on how to leverage LinkedIn to maximize your job opportunities. So hopefully, if you're watching this, maybe you got the recording off my website or from an email from me, and happy to share these tips with your friends or colleagues. Okay, so let's get started. Today's topic is all about LinkedIn. And one thing that I do want to tell you up front is every time I get deep into LinkedIn and I'm helping a client, I find that they're always adding new features. So things are constantly changing and improving in LinkedIn. And so I apologize if some things might seem like I'm not aware, but it is because I'm trying to keep on top of all of the fast changes that are occurring in LinkedIn. Now, if we get started, we're going to talk about some facts and statistics on LinkedIn. I'm going to go in depth into how to create a really solid LinkedIn profile for yourself. And we'll also touch on some behind the scenes job search tips, and then also networking tips. And with that, I'll get started. We should only need half an hour here. But these are some recent facts. So there's 12.7 million people in Australia that have LinkedIn profiles. And that's, gosh, close to half the population, if you look at it that way. So it is a really big tool here. 90% of the recruiters use LinkedIn. 930 million users globally. It's growing every day. 49 million active job searches. And 6 people are hired every minute. So just to give you some powerful facts around why LinkedIn is such a helpful tool. The next thing is, it's really great for networking. 65 to 70% of the jobs are found through your network. So LinkedIn isn't the only networking tool, but it is a really good one for you to have. And it's actually, there are things that are in the design of LinkedIn that make it easier if you are not somebody who likes to network, and most people aren't. They have notifications that remind you of people's birthday or when they get a new job. And so that's a way to keep your contacts warm by saying congrats or happy birthday, and to keep in touch with people that you haven't maybe seen for 10 years. Also, we mentioned that there are 6 people hired every minute. So I really like looking for jobs on LinkedIn, and I'll give you some tips on how to search very specifically for your niche job titles. And then the profile is quite powerful. If you have a really good profile on LinkedIn, people will use that as a kind of a sound check, social media confirmation before they decide to call you. So it's just a very helpful tool in people that are seeking jobs. The next thing is, what is it used for? So you can use it for business to business, business to commerce. But for individuals, you can connect with past colleagues and new ones. There's a TED Talk about how you're frozen in time when you haven't spoken to someone, and they'll remember how great you were 15, 20 years ago. So don't be afraid to connect with old people, old names that you pop up on your LinkedIn feed. Use your profile like a resume, and I'll give you more specifics about that. Find and apply for jobs, and you can see how many people have applied for the jobs, which is kind of nice in LinkedIn. Participate in groups that you might be interested in. Lots of people love climate change. They might be following Greenpeace. And so those types of things that you follow are also a message for others who look at your profile. And then, you can also use it to share your own knowledge and information of courses that you've attended, or specific posts that you really like, research papers that are written that you can share. So yeah, 90% of recruiters use LinkedIn. And the theory is that if you're just starting on LinkedIn, you can get 50 or more connections immediately through people you know. Where would you get those connections? It could be through your hairdresser, your barber, your grocery store, your post office, your kids' school, all the other parents, your friends and family. They don't all have to be in the same city as you. Your old teachers, people that you went to school with. So most people should be able to achieve 50 connections, and then value those connections. Just drop little notes saying, how you doing? Hope you're well. You don't have to write a whole novel just to reach out to someone. The next thing I would say, these are the most critical parts of your profile that people come to look at. They really look at your headline, how creative or what words are in that headline, your photo, your work history, and your about summary. And I'll go into details in each of these things on what to do and what not to do. But 85% of recruiters look you up on LinkedIn before calling you for an interview. So they're actually deciding whether they are going to call you for an interview. So it's really important to have a good LinkedIn profile as opposed to no profile. The next thing is, these are some great headline examples. So in LinkedIn, right under your name, there's one line, and I think it allows, I don't know, maybe 100 characters. It's very short. And so you can write some words that kind of describe you. And I always encourage people not to put their exact job title that they're doing right now. Use this as kind of an identity description. So, these examples are professional problem solver, time traveler, history geek, and museum lover, content and copywriter specializing in plain English, or lawyer, researcher, passionate about climate change. So some of them have used those roles, but that doesn't necessarily match their job title that they're currently in today. And that's okay, because we want it to be broader, and we want it to apply to you. Even if, let's say, you have 2 jobs, lots of people do have multiple jobs nowadays, and that's okay. The next thing that I want to emphasize for people is that having a really good photo on your LinkedIn profile is so important. And I work with a lot of migrants, and for some reason, some of the migrants, maybe because it's a cultural thing from their own country, they don't smile. They just kind of give that stony face, like no expression. But it is really important to smile, to have some, neat, clean clothing, distracting background. And I always encourage people, if you have an iPhone, to use the portrait mode and go out at like sunset, dusk time frame, and just take a few photos in front of a few different backgrounds. If you can't decide, a white background, green trees, just something that is not distracting, but lets it showcase your face and your beautiful eyes and your beautiful smile. Bad photos are party photos, cropped photos that makes it look a bit lazy, or if you're hiding your eyes. I had someone comment on this week that their profile photo has sunglasses in it. So I gave him a nudge that we want to see his beautiful eyes. So yeah, a professional photo gets 21 times more views. So having a great photo is like so important. And not a photo from 10, 15, 20 years ago. Like if it's current, it's good, because that way you're giving an honest representation of what you look like now. Okay, now just to look at some of the more detailed intricacies of the LinkedIn profile. So I met this lovely lady just a couple months ago at a networking event in Sydney for female founder businesses. And she's all about chat GPT. And so I just grabbed her profile. It helps promote her business. Um, and so that headline, you want to write it so that it appeals to your future roles as well. And pick words, sleep on it for a few days if you're not sure what words to use. But there's, quite a few ways that you can write that headline. It's better to not have your job title because that's not your identity, but it's up to you. Also, you need to choose your location, and I see people choose their like exact home suburb, and I would steer away from that. I would choose the greater metropolitan city that you live in. That way, you're opening up yourself to opportunities all around. Let you decide how far you'll commute, not the employer. And people make judgments based on suburbs that you live in, so don't let them do that. And yeah, it's very helpful if you can choose that location. Now, the contact details, you have to click on it in LinkedIn, and then it'll expand to show your name, your birthday, if you want to make that public. You could even remove the year if you don't want people to know your age. You could also list your email, your phone number. You can list multiple emails, phone numbers, website, Instagram, campsite, your bio, if you have a portfolio or some sort of portfolio website URL link, you can put all that stuff. But what I do caution women is not putting your phone number, because LinkedIn does still, I think they fish through that spam, but I think men sometimes from I don't know why, but men still approach women as like a dating app. So I would be cautious about not sharing your contact info unless you connect with someone. In other words, you give them permission to have access to your profile. But there are settings, like for some women business owners, myself included, I do have my information public, and I just have to deal with the inappropriate emails that I might get in my LinkedIn inbox. I'm going to show you how to customize your LinkedIn URL in a minute, so we'll get to that. And then the industry is behind the scenes. So when you click there, when you go to view your own profile, there will be a little pencil here. And when you click on that, it opens it up as you slide down, and you can see the industry. And one of the things I don't love is that they box you into one industry. And they're always improving it and adding more industries. So I think mine is like professional consulting and education. But it is important that you choose the right industry, because that allows people behind the scenes in LinkedIn to find you for certain jobs. So be very selective on which industry you choose in that field. The next thing is these are instructions on how to customize your LinkedIn URL. And if you go into your profile, so you go into view your profile, and then at the very upper right corner, it automatically gives you this pencil where you can edit your public profile and URL. So when you click on this pencil, it opens up your LinkedIn URL. And the goal is to remove these digits, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They show up here in your URL, and they're part of your profile. And what I suggest you do, and this shows the HR people that you're savvy in LinkedIn, you're smart, is go in and like try to delete those digits. Now, some people have very common first and last names, so you may have to add a hyphen or an underscore or a 1 in your name, or maybe your middle name. There's lots of variations, but you can get creative in creating that customized URL link for yourself. And then you can put it on the very top of your resume as part of your contact details. It looks really good, and it's a hyperlink straight to LinkedIn when they're looking at your resume. So it just makes it easy for them to look you up. I really urge everyone that's on LinkedIn to do this. I just a couple months back, I found an article on LinkedIn of 14 really great LinkedIn profiles of people around the world. And when I went through 14 of those great looking profiles, only one person had customized their URL. So that is one of my big tips for all of you. If you're watching, that there's not a lot of people that know about this, maybe 10%, maybe 20. I'd say it's closer to 10%. So that's a good little polish that you can add to your profile. And then this is the two of those really great profile examples. So one lady, her name was Sally. She's a senior financial analyst at Johnson & Johnson. She talks, she starts her about section in the LinkedIn profile with a very personal story, and it's much more relatable than all the business jargon. It talks about her why, why she loves finance. In fact, she doesn't really talk a whole lot about finance, and we know that that can be very boring. But what she establishes is that, she came from a challenging, upbringing and struggling to get an education. She's a hard worker. She's very sociable. And so those are qualities that people would read her profile and think, yeah, I would want to work with Sally. And then Desiree, who's an HR recruiter, she talks about how she would get told by her teacher, her parents would get told that she was just super chatty. And so it's quite perfect that she went into HR because she's always dealing with new people. It gives her energy. She's a very good communicator, and she likes to, advocate for people that are underdogs. So again, it's someone that has written their story that's very appealing to an audience that may not know her. And so that's what I encourage everyone to do in their LinkedIn About summary, is to write it in first person as if you're talking to a friend, and to write some anecdotes or stories about, where you grew up or why you moved to Australia and why this particular industry appeals to you, or why you made a career change, or why you want to make the world a better place. All of those things are quite relatable, and they build a rapport with the readers. And by the way, you don't know how many people look at your LinkedIn profile in secret. It's a lot, and you never get a notification because LinkedIn allows businesses to pay them for a premium account that they can look at all of these individual profiles to find resources, and you will never get a notification of that. So don't underestimate how many people might look at your profile. So to wrap up on the about summary section, tell stories right up front. That first sentence is so important to be an attention grabber. Talk about what ignites your passion or the value you bring. You can speak about your career aspirations or anything about where you grew up. Please write in first person using I, and use short, simple paragraphs. And you can list your achievements if it's not this long list, right? If it's a competitive industry, like if you're going for a senior management role, then it is appropriate to list your really cool, top achievements in your career. But try not to use a whole lot of technical jargon. Try not to brag. The stories are much more authentic than bragging. And don't leave your profile too long where it's no longer current. They can see that you've already left that employer a while ago and you haven't updated it. And try to use more than like 1 or 2 sentences in your about summary. It's really good if you can use a couple of paragraphs. You don't have to list every role you've had in your work history, but recruiters are looking primarily at the last 10 or 15 years, and that's the same that I recommend people on their resumes. Okay, I'm just checking if there's any questions in the chat. Okay, so what are they skimming when they're looking at your work history? They're looking at the employers that you worked for. They're looking at, does it match your resume and your application? So that they're looking at dates. They're looking at job titles. If there's anything that's different, now they think you're lying or that you've made something up. So they'll throw out your application. They're looking at your lengthen roles. By the way, it's not a bad thing if you moved up quickly at a company. If you only wasn't started in a role for 6 months, then you moved up to another role, that's a great thing for them to see. So don't be shy about listing those progression in your career. And then, yeah, they look at your education, your short courses that you might list, your volunteering, and your recommendations are really good because it's a testimonial of what you were like to work with. So if they have nothing to go on versus, you know, just a couple of recommendations that old colleagues have written about you, that is something that they will review and try to get a flavor for what type of person you are. But just remember that your employment section is not your resume. It's a supplement to your resume. So you don't need to put all of your responsibilities and achievements in your work history in LinkedIn. It's important to have it on your resume, but you don't have to have that level of detail. Some people do put it. It's not forbidden, but it's not something that people would be as interested in as the job titles and your career progression. Okay, next thing is, this is a tip that I learned a few years ago. When you're looking for a job title, you can go up here in LinkedIn and type the actual title, but it's actually the difference of, I believe when I did this this week, it was like 1,000 jobs just in Sydney that related to a business analyst. But when I put it in quotation marks, it narrowed down to very specific jobs that are advertised that have business analyst in the title. So I don't know if you guys have the same experience, but sometimes you get notifications on jobs that don't really match your criteria. So what I recommend people is go in here, type the very specific job titles, and then see here where it says set alert. So you can set an alert. And I think you have the choice of getting a daily or a weekly email with those jobs. So I really recommend you save a couple of job titles that relate to the type of role. Some companies have funky job titles that don't necessarily match the job. It's still happening today. Sometimes it's lazy. Sometimes it's related to pay scales. Sometimes it's just the effort, the amount of effort the HR team has to go through to write up a new position description and do all the research to attach, you know, a job requisition to that, pay, benefits, all of that. So sometimes people just take the easier way out and use a job title that's already existing in their system, but the job description in the ad might be very different. So you can use that tip. I hope it helps you. The other thing that I want people to know is if you go to the jobs tab when you're looking at LinkedIn, on the right-hand side, it automatically asks you to show recruiters that you're open to new job opportunities. So when you click on this, it opens up this window, and I couldn't show the whole thing, but what I did want to show you is, again, you can type the exact job titles, that's a bit further at the top, and save those to tell people, the behind the scenes people that are looking at your profile, what types of jobs, cybersecurity analyst, you know, you can be very specific. And then always add the location. You can say immediately, or I'm flexible. You can list, you know, whether you want part-time, hybrid. But the one thing that I want to let people know is you have the choice of clicking recruiters only, which means that that open to work message on your bubble, your photo bubble, will not appear. So it's basically not letting everyone in the world know that you are open to new jobs. If you click on all LinkedIn members, then it puts that open to work notification in your bubble. It stays there until you change it. I don't really love the open to work because what it does is it causes people, it psychologically prompts them to go look at, oh, how long has she been out of work? 6 months, 12 months, what's wrong with her? Why aren't other people hiring her? So I would rather people not skip to that step to see how long have I been looking and read more about me before they find that, oh yeah, I have been out of work for 12 months. Because there might be a ton of valid reasons that you're out of work. There could be COVID, you're caring for a sick family member, you're on maternity leave, you were traveling, You were getting your certifications, you were studying for another degree. Like there's so many reasons. And I do encourage you to list that in your LinkedIn profile. But the open to work, I don't love putting that in your picture or even in your headline. So that's not a recommendation that I make. But yeah, so the recruiters only, if you are looking, that's telling them that, yeah, I'm open if you want to approach me. And I do hear people getting approached behind the scenes on LinkedIn. So don't underestimate the power of them finding you. And then lastly, these are some tips that I leave with. So check your privacy setting. If you make your profile invisible, I can still search you on LinkedIn if I know the spelling of your name and I can see your profile. But what it does do if you make it invisible is it doesn't send out alerts if you're changing or updating your profile. And it doesn't put you in the feed for others to see your profile. That is very different than if you're viewing someone's profile. You have three choices on how it looks when you look at someone else's profile. And I think that you should always leave your name and information public, because the more people see you viewing their profile, the more they're going to think about you and maybe reach out and say hi, or pull up your resume application, or think, I wonder why that person's looking at my profile. Like, it's okay to be public about that, because that's what the tool is for. But you can switch it to anonymous. The only problem is when anybody looks at your profile, it's anonymous too. So I don't recommend anonymous. The third option is you can say, I'm a finance person working for a big company in Australia. So it just shows kind of the headline of the type of work that the person does and that they viewed my profile. So I don't recommend that either, but there might be reasons that people want privacy. So that is an option when you go into the security and settings. And I have some tips on how to connect with people. Let me start down here. So researching employers, there are ways, if you research employers, to look at who's working for the business. You can even look at people that graduated from the same school as you. You can look at where the employees actually live or where they studied. You can look at their job titles of their employees. You can research who the HR team is. I encourage people to do that because it gives you a bit more notoriety by them seeing your profile, viewing theirs, and increases your chances of getting a call back for interviews. And it's really smart to do that if you are researching the company, because you got an interview and you're preparing for that interview. So look what they're posting about. Look who's posting within the business. And then how to connect with people on LinkedIn. I always encourage people, when you get that connection request, it always gives you the option to add a personal note. You should write a little personal note. I see that we have a mutual friend, or I love that you studied in the UK. Love your profile. Anything that just says, I'm not spamming you, is smart. It says, I really want to connect with you. If you're approaching a stranger, then you should take a bit more time and really study their profile. Mention something unique that you saw in their profile and ask them for career advice. Or you can just say, I'd love to connect, and maybe leave it for a week or two and then ask them for career advice. I'm new to Australia, or I'm new to this role. I would love to hear your opinion on, the good and the bad, how you found it in your career. Would you do anything differently? People do love to give advice. If you're not asking them for a job, it takes the pressure off them responding. And look, I do approach strangers on behalf of my clients. I would say 1 in 10 will actually respond. A lot of people don't look at LinkedIn. Other people may think that you're trying to sell them something. So I kind of get it. But it does work for some of us, that in how you craft that note, how kind the person is and receptive to responding to. So I do get strangers agreeing to meet with some of my clients. And we talked about the security. So yeah, just make sure that you limit your contact information. Make sure you use your personal email address with your LinkedIn account, because your jobs and your emails, your work emails, will change over time. So always make sure that you set up your LinkedIn account as the primary email address is your personal email address. And this is, if anyone wants this presentation, I was going to send it out to you with the hyperlink to this article on LinkedIn of the 14 really great LinkedIn profile summaries. I think it was published in the middle of COVID. So it's like people that worked at Twitter, their job has changed. Yeah, a couple of other things have changed, but it still gives them, it still shows you the great profile or the photos and how they wrote their about summary. So I think it has good content in that article. And I think that's it. I just want to open it up for any questions. And what I might do is I might show you just a little bit for those that want to hang around, just a little bit more ins and outs of LinkedIn, because I didn't want to take too much time today of showing navigating in LinkedIn while we were covering some of these tips. So I'll just open it up to any people that want to ask a question. If you want to type it in the chat box, I would love to hear your questions. And in the meantime, I'm going to escape out of this presentation. I'm going to share my screen here just to show you LinkedIn. So when we go into the view profile, this is where you can see the pencil of the public profile, yeah? And then it lets you open up that field to decide if you can change. So I could add like a 1, 2, 3 here if I wanted to update my, it'll tell you if it's already been saved or not. And then another thing that we could do is if I go into my profile and I want to look at the industry, so if I open that window up and go down here, there's tons of industries, right? So if I delete that and I go to look at everything, there's going to be a long list of industries, yeah? So yeah, what else can I show you guys? I can add education. I'm going to cancel out of this. I've put Sydney's postal code. Add a link that will appear. I've put my website. So let's cancel out of that. Discard. And when I look at the contact info, I am very protective of my female LinkedIn profile. So I don't encourage you to put your phone number here. But if you do put your phone number, people can search it on LinkedIn and it will link right back to your profile. So just be aware of that. And it's also on Google. Yeah, so this is my personal email. This is my business email, which I have on the top of my website for people to send me emails. I've left out the year. Nothing else really fancy in my contact info details. What else? I can put a banner up here if I want. Some people like to put something, you know, Sydney Opera House, or they're surfing at Bondi Beach, like they're very proud to live in Australia. So nothing wrong with that, but just make sure you still have that professional photo of yourself. And yeah, I think that's it. Let me just check if there's any questions. All right. Well, I'm going to say farewell and bid you adieu. And hopefully you guys are watching the World Cup women's soccer tonight. Go Australia. And thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time, and I hope that you found this valuable. All right. Bye. You're welcome. Thanks much.